Hello, my name is Jawan Garrett, and I'm working on a shop research project about mental health. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have two guests with us here to talk about mental health and their experiences. Ms. Kelly, could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Kashawn Kelly. I am a clinical site supervisor for a mental health facility in Georgia. I'm a licensed associate professional counselor, nationally certified counselor, all the things. So, yeah,
Thank you for being here with us today.
thank you.
Madison, could you tell us who you are and what you do as well?
My name is Madison Bird. I am a fourth year psychology student here at West Georgia. I'll graduate this semester and hopefully go into more of what you're doing now. Yeah.
Well, we're so excited to have you as well. We're just going to jump right into it. So, could either one of you just tell us some of your thoughts about mental health?
Sure, I guess I'll start.
You want to start?
Sure. Um, so, just how it's perceived in what was it? Say it again. Couldn't hear.
Like just your thoughts about mental health.
Yeah. Um, I think at some point it was a very taboo topic where a lot of people didn't talk about it, but now it's getting a little bit more common. People kind of use it in everyday conversation. Like I'm going to the store, going to see my therapist. You know, they just kind of it's just a little bit more acceptable. So, but I think it's really important for us to deal with, just like you deal with your teeth and your, you know, other parts of your body. So the brain is important too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would say that it used to be something that people looked down upon, like if you talked about your mental health, and now it's like you're accepted more, or it's like appreciated if you talk about it because everybody goes through it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Madison, could you tell us as a student what are some of the common struggles that you deal with, or like things that you and your friends talk about?
So, I do full time school. I also work part time, and then I was an athlete for a while. So it was a lot. My first year, I will say, was the hardest. It was just an adjustment period. We all talked about like the stress of trying to get everything done in the short amount of time that we would have, and I guess we would all come together and try to help each other. Like if we had times when we were like super stressed or like overworking ourselves, we would sit down and like come up with a plan and figure out like a strategy of getting things done.
Ms. Kelly, as a professional, could you tell us what are the common challenges that people see or that you see?
Yeah, for sure. I see a lot of anxiety, depression, or like family difficulties, just difficulty like navigating like relationships, just and that's on a spectrum, right? So a little bit of anxiety or like a whole lot where you're in crisis, a little bit of depression or a whole lot where you're also in crisis, things like that. So, yeah.
So, either one of you can answer, but what are some of the common stressors or triggers that kind of come up and they cause the challenges to arise?
Putting things off. If if something comes up, I have to deal with it right then. Because if I let it start, it's like a snowball effect. And then they add on, and then the little add-ons make the depression and everything else worse, for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was going to actually say that just like work stress and school stress, like letting it pile up, eventually it'll definitely catch up with you and cause those symptoms, right, that people are seeing. Also say like feeling out of control just in general. That kind of leads people to feeling like anxiety or depression or, you know, just like feeling rejected or, you know, a lot of different things. Triggers are different for a lot of different people, but and then triggers also go into if you've experienced like trauma, that's a whole different like set of triggers. So they're really specific to the person, but in general, I think overall feeling out of control, feeling like you don't have purpose, are kind of like the main core of triggers. Yeah.
So, how do people deal with it? What are some of the skills that you, as a professional, recommend to your clients, or Madison? What do you do to kind of deal with everything?
Um, well, it was hard. I had to learn that you can't control everything. At the end of the day, life is something that just kind of comes and goes, and it's constantly changing. It was hard to learn to give up the control of it, but it's I wouldn't say that you laugh things off, but some things aren't as serious as they seem. Like when you're wrapped up in this tiny little bubble and it's spiraling, like everything seems like the end of the world. But if you take a step back and you can look at it more objectively, then it's less stressful and less scary. And I mean, you have time, especially in like college. It's nobody expects you to be perfect. They just want you to find what suits you at the time, because nobody knows what they want to do forever, just like right now.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great response. And I think, like you said, taking a step back and kind of looking at it like from an outside perspective is good with like journaling, right? Like
Yes.
putting it on a separate somewhere, whether it's your phone or your paper or whatever, or just like saying it out loud, just like getting it out of here and like kind of putting it somewhere else is really good for coping. Of course, like breathing exercises, music is a huge one that I see like all the time. People always say listening to music. It's like one of their main ones. Some people don't think about this as a coping skill, but like social interaction, just like being around human beings, because that's what we're like designed to do, is like be around each other. And I think social media has kind of like taken us out of that and really like isolated a lot of people, which is where we see like depression and anxiety and all the things really kind of increase. So
Yeah.
Do you think like the social media either causes a greater strain between anybody's mental health, or does it kind of bring people together and allow people to relate to one another as opposed to like that social sense?
yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it's kind of both. So like in a way, it's pulled people away from interacting socially, but it's also given people a platform to say like, I've gone through this, this, and this, and have another 100 people say me too, right? And feel like very validated and very like they belong and they feel like a sense of community. So I think it could be both, really.
Madison, I know UWG has the Sharpen Minds app,
Yes.
and have you used it before? Could you tell us like what
Yeah.
it does, how it helped you?
So, like she mentioned, I do journal, and they give you like prompts and stuff like that. I've gone through, and they have like multiple different sections that you can go, and there's videos and just people talking about the different struggles. I guess I've used it for like 3 years, or ever since it started, and I really like it. It's good to hear from more like professionals, the things that like I would experience, and have it explained in a way that I can understand, not as like reading me a textbook that I could go get in a class. Like they put it in a way that you can comprehend and use in your own life.
So, Ms. Kelly, what are some preventative measures that people can do just to make sure that they kind of keep that balance and be sure that they don't go into crisis mode?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always going to drive social interaction. So I feel like establishing your support system. So like having a good, solid, few like safe people, right, that you could go to as a preventative measure. I think I've said this already, but kind of like treating your mental health like any other health, right? Like if your teeth hurt, you go to the dentist. If you feel something regarding emotions or something's going on with your body, go to a therapist and kind of talk about like what that is, right? I think, yeah, and just kind of consistency with therapy. I know that's going to look different for a lot of different people, but if it's like once a week or once a quarter, just once a year, just to check in, I think it's preventative for sure.
So, as a whole, what are some things that you'd like to see change about like the way people see mental health, or do you think that mental health is kind of doing its thing? It's definitely in the media enough for people to not feel shame or stigmatized towards talking about their mental health or anything like that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I really do like how open it is. I wanted to stay more of where it's at and not people like making it worse than it is, because there's a difference between sadness and depression and regular anxiety and like, the extreme versions. I just don't want us to get to a point where everything is blown out of proportion. Everybody thinks they have depression when it's just like everyday upset feeling or sadness.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. To piggyback off of that, I would like for people to just get a little bit more educated on especially like the terms,
Mhm.
right? Not saying like my pen is this way, so I have OCD. Like, no, that's an actual disorder that people struggle with every day. So just I would want just society as a whole just to get a little bit more like educated on mental health terms and what it is and what it really means. I think we're on a really good track in terms of like being open, like you said,
Mhm.
about it. But I also don't want people to start to get insensitive and start to kind of like desensitize to like these are real issues that people really deal with on a day-to-day basis. So, but I think just in general, we're on a really good track with it being more open and talked about. But I just think I'd rather people to just get a little bit more educated, and then people who aren't on board just like come on board. Like, you know?
I feel like it's like WebMD almost. Like if
Mhm.
you think you have a cold, you're gonna go look up your symptoms. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I could have cancer. It's not cancer most of the time.
Mhm.
And like with the education wise, I think it'd be so good because then not everyone would think they're depressed and or experiencing PTSD or any
Mhm.
of that. They would actually understand what they're saying.
Well, this was a really insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Ms. Kelly and Madison, for joining us and having this conversation today. I'm so glad that we were able to talk about mental health, and thank you for joining us. Watch my reports to learn more on WUTV.